begin.
Hello, my name is Cedric.
Hello, my name is Sophia. I live in Paris for 14 years.
My name is Séverine Zami. I live in Paris.
I'm Carlo.
Christophe.
Kim.
Hugo.
My name is Gabriela Schwartz.
My name is Joy Chen. I come from Paris. I live in Paris.
Climate change.
Climate change.
Climate change is a critical thing.
It affects our health. The climate change also affects our day-to-day life.
Cities are the one who have to lead us.
It's little solution by little solutions that we're gonna get to the point.
The temperature is always changing.
It is an emergency to do something about it.
Action, it's action time.
If they don't find any solution, it's gonna be terrible.
It's never late to do good.
We want a healthy life together.
Yeah, me too.
I hope that you can make a change for us.
To preserve our planet.
Something must happen now.
We can do more and we can do better.
When do you begin?
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to Paris.
Welcome to Paris. Bienvenue à Paris.
Welcome to Paris.
Welcome to Paris.
Welcome to the city of Paris.
Welcome to my city.
Bienvenue à Paris.
Try to be together and try to change, to make the change. That's it.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Deputy Mayor of Paris, Patrick Klugman.
Mesdames et messieurs, chers amis,
Dear friends,
bienvenue à l'Hôtel de Ville de Paris.
welcome to Paris City Hall, the Hôtel de Ville. Today, this will be more than City Hall for Parisians. This will be the City Hall for all cities of the world. Together, we're going to experience a historic moment. And some are already calling this the COP21 of cities. Behind me, there are 4 cities from global cities involved in working on climate change. Kadir Tobash, Mayor of Istanbul, President of ICLG. Eduardo Paes, Mayor of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, President of the C40. Park Won-soon, Mayor of Seoul, South Korea, President of ICLEI, and Khalifa Sol, Mayor of Dhaka, and President of the UCLGA, French-speaking cities mayors.
Sans attendre,
Without any further ado, I'd like to ask you to welcome the President of the French Republic, François Hollande, the Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, and the Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General for Cities and Climate Change, Michael Bloomberg.
Madame la maire de Paris, ce sommet,
The Mayor, Madam Mayor, this is a summit which you wanted to hold and which you've organized. So, dear Anne, it's with pleasure that I yield the floor.
Monsieur le Président de la République, cher François Hollande, Monsieur l'envoyé spécial des Nations Unies pour les villes et le climat, cher Michael Bloomberg, Mesdames et Messieurs les présidents des réseaux.
Ladies and gentlemen, the presidents of the networks of cities, ladies and gentlemen, mayors, dear colleagues, today we are meeting because we have come to be aware of a common danger, the danger of climate change for our planet and humanity. If we do nothing, we'll only have a terrible horizon with the destruction of nature and culture. As you know, the catastrophe is not in the distant future. It's imminent. It's already underway. So the question is no longer, as one of the fathers of ecology wrote in the early 60s, to free the future. Now we have to save the future, make this future possible. It's because of this emergency situation that we, as mayors, governors, and elected officials from the entire world, have decided to meet in Paris to commit our cities and our communities in what is a fight for survival and also to help invent a new form of life. So I'd like to welcome and salute the men and women who've come from across the world to speak on behalf of their cities. We are elected officials from all continents. We've learned to know one another, to respect one another, and to work together. We are diverse representatives, but we are totally united in representing humanity, a humanity which does not accept any division between North and South, between a new world and an old world, between developed countries and countries which are developing, because we only have one planet and mankind is unique. This diversity and our unity is something which is very dear to the Parisians after the terrible suffering caused by the recent attacks 3 weeks ago. This is a precious testimony to life, the life which we respect, and they are a way of ensuring that everyone who believes in life and nature will triumph against all forces which threaten them. Now we have national governments which here are seeking a universal binding agreement, and here I would like to salute the work done by the Secretary General of the United Nations and the President of the French Republic, while national governments are seeking a universal and binding agreement to work on the destiny of the planet. We, cities from all across the world, are working here in the House of the Parisians to remind everyone that we are involved in this destiny. The voice of urban citizens represents over 600 million citizens ready to act to preserve the climate. We have the voice of thousands of cities which can move forward with the ecological transition and which humanity needs, and also the democratic process which humanity is entitled to. Here we have the voice of elected officials who want to implement day in and day out advanced public policies for their population. Our mobilization is historic, and it can resolve half of the global climate equation, half of the global equation. It is what I call a Pacific revolution because it commits territories to seeking a global solution with and helping national governments. Cities operate on the only scale which makes sense, the human scale, because we start with today's reality in order to build tomorrow's reality where we can live. My dear colleagues, the negotiators are counting on us. It's important to be as concrete and as decisive as the dangers which threaten us. The dangers are real and present, and our responses are immediate. Therefore, we have to be operational in moving forward with our day's work today. We are operational day in and day out in order to deliver services to the citizens who've trusted us. We have been operational in preparing this summit. We have to be operational today and henceforth in order to invent and implement going forward with citizens the local solutions which will be the basis for all global solutions. This is what we are doing with our solutions, and this is what we will do in being the solution.
Je vais maintenant donner la parole à l'autre co-organisateur de ce
the
sommet,
floor to the other co-organizer of our summit, Michael Bloomberg.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome, and thank you all for joining us. President Hollande, we are happy to have you here and honored by your presence. In America, we admire your strength and fortitude, particularly over the last several weeks. I know that our country is proud to stand side by side with France, as you have always stood with us from the founding of our country. Let me also join in thanking Mayor Hidalgo. I think it's fair to say she has done an extraordinary job leading Paris forward through a very difficult time, while also working extremely hard to make this summit. Yes. I think they like you. She really has done an extraordinary job leading Paris through difficult times and also working extremely hard to make this summit and the UN meeting as successful as they must be. I think we owe the entire city of Paris our gratitude. We stand with them, we understand what they've gone through, and we will always be with the City of Light. There's no better place to host this summit than here, which has so often been the center of events that have shaped our history, and I don't think there's any better time than the present. It has been 3 weeks since the tragic attacks here in Paris took so many innocent lives. By accident, I happened to be here that day working with Mayor Hidalgo to finalize arrangements for this summit. And the morning after the attacks, I returned to City Hall to offer our support and to promise that all of us would be here today in solidarity with Paris. We must always stand united against terror, as we are today, because when we stand together as one, there is nothing that we can't accomplish. I truly believe that it's the driving idea behind this summit. Climate change poses risks to every city and every region in our country, but if we work together, we can meet that challenge as well. This group is leading by example, and as the largest ever meeting of mayors and local leaders on climate change, and the first ever local summit to coincide with international negotiations on climate, we are making history right here today. But we did not come to Paris to make history, we came to shape the future. And this group is uniquely positioned to do exactly that. You're an incredibly diverse group, but you're driven by a common goal, to show that the way forward is to confront climate change head on. You have the authority to act and will succeed, and you're making great strides. Today and over the coming weeks, we will highlight the work we're doing and put local climate action on the global stage. And that's critically important. So far, international negotiations haven't fully recognized the major contributions that local leaders can make and the role that you must play. Today's summit, we think, will help fix that. It will help cities and local governments set climate goals, create plans, and report progress. And by drawing the world's attention to how much progress we're making, we can encourage national leaders to aim higher, think boldly, and act quickly. Today, we are more united than ever before in this fight. We're speaking with one voice, and that voice must be heard. So I want to thank all of you again for being here, and I want to thank all of the city networks that have come together to support this summer. This really is a historic day, and I'm looking forward to what we can accomplish. So now let me turn the floor back over so we can proceed with the real business this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for this very inspiring speech. And now, it is my pleasure to turn to 4 great mayors, head of city networks, and give them a time to talk. Kadir Tolbash, you are the mayor of Istanbul. You are the president of UCLG. What is your perspective on local action on climate?
Okay. This way?
You can go this way.
Saygıdeğer ekselansları, değerli Cumhurbaşkanı, değerli onur konuğu Bloomberg, ev sahibi belediye başkanı, Paris Belediye Başkanı, değerli katılımcılar, hanımefendiler, beyefendiler.
Mayor of Paris, Special Envoy, Bloomberg, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished mayors. Today, we are meeting at our summit meeting in order to allow local governments' voices to be heard. It's very important that we can make our voices heard. As the president of the UCLG, we are very happy to be here. We are closest to citizens as mayors, and people say it's easier to manage what is local than what is more distant. We, in our municipalities, are closer to citizens. And combat the global planets that our planet must address. And we can improve citizens' awareness in order to encourage them to adopt lifestyles which are more respectful of the environment and our planet. So, as representatives of local government, we hope, we're determined that citizens will play a greater role in decisions. Local governments have to be seen as participants contributing to the solution in the United Nations and internationally, as Special Envoy Bloomberg pointed out. More than ever, our voice is being heard, and our organization represents mayors who are closest to citizens. We're here to help prepare the future of our planet.
Eduardo Paes, you are the mayor of Rio. You are the president of the C40, of course. What role can large cities play on climate action?
Well, let me speak from here, Mr. President, my mayor Hidalgo. First, I could not come into the stage and not, in the name of all mayors of C40, and I think of all mayors here, I think Mayor Hidalgo, she embodies the strength of the Parisians, of people of this great city. I said yesterday, President Hollande, that when Paris is attacked, I think it's not against the French, it's not against the Parisian, it's against civilization, it's against all of us. So we are very happy that you're showing such a resilience, and it's good to be here at this moment together with the Parisians. So again, this is a very special city. And I think this is a great opportunity for us to show that local governments, that mayors, that local authorities, they can do lots to climate change. This is one of the great challenges. We have organizations here as C40, as UCLG, as ICLEI, that get together. And I think in the past few years, led by Mayor Bloomberg now as a special envoy to the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, I think what cities have done in the past few years will make a big difference in the future. Not to say bad things about nation states, about national governments, but the capability of local governments, with the help of nation governments, of federal governments, to get things done is much, much higher. So I hope this day of work will show the path to a better and safer world, and we are here in Paris to talk about the future, and this is very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Pakristan, you are the mayor of Seoul. You are the president of ICLEI. Do you think that cities can help us to reach ambitious targets?
Okay, I will use.
Or if you prefer, you can go here.
Bonjour, everybody. I'm Won-Sun Park, Mayor of Seoul and President of ICLEI. First of all, I would like to express my sincere condolences to all the victims of the recent terrorist attacks in this great city, Paris. This year, the 21st Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is being held in Paris. So I sincerely hope with all distinguished participants at today's meeting that the COP21st is remembered historic meeting that pushed for new climate regime in the world and saved the world from the threat of climate change. So earlier this year in April, the city of Seoul hosted the World Congress of ICLEI, and I accepted the presidency of ICLEI. Cities around the world came together in solidarity and cooperation, and we agreed to adopt the Seoul Declaration, which includes the common goals of sustainable growth in cities, as well as the 10 main agendas of the ICLEI. So our 1,000 plus ICLEI members agreed to implement the Seoul Action Plan, which includes the specific measures to achieve sustainable growth in cities. So, with ICLEI, C40, and UCLG, we will go forward together to change the climate change and change the world. Let's go together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Khalifa Sall, vous êtes le maire de Dakar. Vous êtes le secrétaire.
Mr. Fassal, you are the mayor of Dakar. You are the general secretary of the International Association of French-speaking cities mayors, and you've just come back from Johannesburg, where there was a meeting of all mayors in Africa. What message would you like to convey for the COB? On behalf of Africa, the continent of the future, I would like to express the condolence and the support and solidarity of the people of Africa as you deal with this problem. But we also wish to express our support for this combat you are leading. Dear Anne, the chairman, as the chair of the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, we are proud of what you have done with Mayor Bloomberg so that the mayors of the world cities can come here to contribute to the future of the world and to building the future of our planet. Africa is conscious of its role and intends to fully play its role so the world can be united, so the world can change, so that the future can be global and shared by all. Thank you.
After hearing such inspiring speeches from mayors, I now would like to invite someone who is directly involved in climate negotiation for COP21. Please welcome China's Special Representative for Climate Change Affairs, Mr. Xie Zhenhua.
President, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm delighted to be able to participate at COP21, and I'm very happy to be present at this summit of local elected representatives. On behalf of the entire Chinese nation, I would like to thank Mr. Bloomberg and Madam Mayor Hidalgo for organizing this summit and this historical event, which is COP21. Climate change is a fact. We don't need to prove it anymore. We knew this. In China, urbanization is going on, urban development is going on, we're fighting against poverty, and at the same time, we are facing up to climate change. We don't need to make any declarations anymore. What we need now is concrete acts. Which is why China wants to contribute on a voluntary basis, which means that CO2 emission should not be achieved as a peak in 2030, but before that. And this is what we are working on. And locally, we are disseminating our national objective at the local level. So we are moving ahead. We're in advance as regards fighting climate change. We have the 12th five-year plan, and of course, in this combat, cities are particularly important because that's where the possibilities are. That's where we have to act. And for the past few years, we have been organizing pilot projects involving 36 Chinese cities. We are setting up objective strategies. We are deciding concrete measures for fighting climate change and mitigating climate change. 52% of our GDP and 56% of CO2 emission are represented here, are at stake here. And we are accelerating this work. We want to use as little coal as possible and reduce CO2 emissions to the maximum, which means that we have to change our way of working. And all these cities are pioneering this work in China, mitigating climate change. Within the framework of the national plan, we are 10% ahead of our goals that we have set for ourselves. And this is why I want to point out that these cities are represented at the summit of mayors with American mayors and set up an alliance of these pioneering cities. And of course, these cities will reduce pollution as much as possible, as soon as possible, and will share their experience with the rest of the cities at local and worldwide basis. And this is what we want to do everywhere. We have to face up to this challenge. We have to overcome the hurdles and see this as an opportunity to protect our planet as best we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your remarks. And now, we have the pleasure to welcome a great pioneer, a great leader, a great entrepreneur, Mr. Elon Musk, CEO and founder of Tesla.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's a great pleasure. Paris was actually the first trip that I ever had when I was about 6 years old out of South Africa, was to visit Paris, and I've been in love with the city ever since. It's really, really great to be back. What I was going to just talk about just for a few minutes is in terms of the solution, I think that is really important, and it's really the people in this room that can take action on the solution, because fundamentally it is government that sets the rules, that sets the incentives, and that decides what should be favored or disfavored. And I think the critical thing that we need to do is to correctly price carbon. This can be done either through a carbon tax or a cap and trade, which is effectively a carbon tax. But I think the real focus in terms of really getting to a solution is to have a revenue-neutral carbon tax. It's something where the total tax burden doesn't increase, but the taxes are shifted to favor things that we believe are most likely good and disfavor things that we believe are most likely bad. Whereas the situation we have right now in the world, in most places, is that we actually incent the wrong behavior. So this is fundamentally the role of government to address. And I think if we were to, say, hypothetically reduce taxes on say, sales tax or VAT, but then increase taxes on carbon, that could be something that is very palatable to the people in your cities. That's something that I think would have a huge effect, and really the biggest effect, because there's only so much that companies can do if they're fighting an incentive structure which incents negative behavior. So that's I think really the key thing that hopefully is the focus and the outcome of the discussions here in the climate talks. And yeah, that's really what I have to say. That's really the thing that has to happen. It's inevitable that we will get off carbon. It will happen no matter what, simply as a function of scarcity. The question is just, how long does it take? And if we set the rules right, it can be done much faster than if the rules are set wrong. That's it. Thank you.
Mesdames et messieurs, j'invite maintenant...
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to invite the President of the French Republic, François Hollande, to speak. You have the floor, sir.
Madame la maire de Paris,
Madam Mayor, dear Anne Hidalgo, Mr. Special Envoy Michael Bloomberg, ladies and gentlemen, mayors, presidents of local authorities, your presence here is a tremendous sign of commitment and solidarity. Solidarity after the trials that France has experienced. Paris and the city of Saint-Denis were affected by abject crime, and once again, you were able to show through many messages in many different ways, with the Marseillaise being sung, with your floral commemoration, you convinced the planet that we are all one, and that indeed there is a fight against terrorism which can't be restricted to just some countries. It affects all of us. Paris was affected, but other cities have been affected. Recently, I'm thinking of Bamako. But there were other terrorist acts, odious acts. I'm thinking about what occurred in Turkey, what, alas, affected an aircraft between Sharm el-Sheikh and St. Petersburg. We're all concerned because terrorism can strike anywhere, wherever it can strike a group, affect a country, and seek to destroy ways of life. We are all, therefore, mobilized. And I interpret your presence here in this respect as well as your willingness to participate as cities and local authorities. We have two duties. The first is to do what's required to protect ourselves, to ensure security, Nations must act, and cities as well. But we also have another duty, which is to express our cohesion, our solidarity, and an implacable struggle against inequality within our countries and across the world as well. In addition, we have the universal calling, which defines each and every one of us. We act locally, but we also want to weigh globally. This is the meaning of the meeting in the framework of the climate summit in Paris. Its proceedings began on Monday. 150 heads of state and government attended. So that in itself is already a considerable event. 150 heads of state and government who represent countries of different sizes, different philosophies, and sometimes different interests. But they were present in order to provide the necessary political impetus for the climate conference to conclude not only with an agreement, but also with a binding commitment, a universal agreement binding all countries. And this shows the importance of the national contributions. Over 180 have been filed. This agreement must be binding. Otherwise, what would be the point of making declarations if they're not followed through on? This has to be a long-term agreement subject to periodical review, and it also has to take into account the specific features that you represent. So the heads of state and government met, and you are here in Paris around Michael Bloomberg and Annie Hidalgo, the special envoy from the United Nations, has for several months, indeed for several years, he and you have been carrying a message. There will be no genuine action against climate change unless we see the active commitment of everyone who acts, invests, and decides at local level. So for several months, you've been preparing this. I'm thinking about the summit in Lyon, which occurred several months ago. You have done what's required so that your association of mayors and local authorities can be a participant, a party to the negotiations. You are here in Paris with the mayor of Paris to show that there are solutions. Indeed, for there to be an agreement in Paris, there must be commitments undertaken by national governments. We need a text which the negotiators are currently working on, and then the ministers will deal with that, and then a consensus will emerge. The heads of state and government will then have their word to say at the end. Nevertheless, there must be funding. I'll get back to that. There must be funding commensurate with the challenge, and there must also be solutions. And when we look at the agenda for solutions, this is where you have to be particularly mobilized. I know that you represent several networks of regions, cities, and territories. Sometimes there are differences in developed countries and also developing countries, but you are faced with the same urgent situations. And what has struck me, particularly in recent months, is that no region of the world could avoid dealing with this, could consider that it's not affected by climate disorder. And if some parts of the world are more affected than others, you have to remember that today the entire planet is affected. We've had signs of this. The year now ending has been the hottest year in the history of our planet. We have all the signs that greenhouse gas emissions have reached record levels. We have all the evidence required regarding the elevation of the sea level. We also have counted the greatest number of climate catastrophes in 2014. In front of these situations, we have to react. You submitted climate platforms in all areas: transportation, housing, energy, circular economy, waste recycling, and all of these initiatives will be part of the plan of action, Lima Paris, which is being discussed all week long in the framework of the COP21 process. You are also going to adopt a declaration which will have a major role to play. This is an ambitious declaration focusing on three items which the negotiators will be working on: adjustment to climate change, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and the necessary funding for the adjustment. We have 4 challenges to meet. The first is the challenge of solidarity. The cities and territories with the greatest impact of climate change are most often located in developing countries. These are countries which are most vulnerable, which nevertheless have made very little in the way of the negative contribution to greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. Some of these territories could even disappear physically by the end of the century. Therefore, we must jointly, cities, local authorities, and national governments, we must all seek climate justice. The Paris Convention mustn't be simply an affirmation of a number of actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It must also be a declaration with the means required for redistribution, to fight against inequality, to fight poverty. And you can't separate the struggle against climate change from the struggle against poverty. The second challenge is that of urban development. By 2050, cities will house 2/3 of mankind. And if nothing is done, 70% of CO2 emissions will arise from cities. In 2015, our planet has 7 billion people. In 2050, there will be 10 billion, most in cities. If urban growth isn't mastered and controlled, we'll have not only problems with safety, security, and inequality, but in addition, there would be a degradation, a deterioration of our climate. Therefore, in looking at urban development, we're looking forward to other forms of urban construction, green cities, energy-positive territories. And this is one of the issues that will be very important, looking at your action and what national governments do. I'm very happy to see that you have the ambition of 200 to 300 cities, which will be able to undertake adaptation programs. The third challenge is one of funding. I imagine that for you, this is the key challenge. COP21 has to mobilize funds and resources in order to support the transition and adaptation. The figure of 100 billion was mentioned at Copenhagen, but you have to do more than simply announce a figure. You have to do more than tally up the sums. You have to do more to mobilize resources. There will doubtless be 100 billion at the end of next week. 100 billion that will be made available. What does that mean? For some of that amount, these will be donations or gifts from national governments. You can consider them certain. There are also the international financial institutions, the development banks, and we could add them to the equation without much risk. And then there are other resources. Private resources are necessary. In addition, there are the resources which local authorities could contribute. And then there are funds which could be made available from major financial institutions in order to change investments in the area of climate. As stated earlier, a carbon tax, the carbon price, a carbon contribution in cities and regions, and the example has been set in some cases. Continents have done this. Europe is committed. China is preparing. All of this could contribute to this funding. We need 100 billion starting 2020, and this is 100 billion a year. And now we have a green fund which has been set up. It hasn't been sufficiently funded yet, but it's beginning to fund projects. What has to count for you isn't simply the amount of funding, it's also access to the sources of funding. I know this is one of the things you have called for. We have to do everything possible to simplify the process with a single counter system to allow access to guaranteed resources, loans, and loans provided under special circumstances, as well as philanthropy. This will allow for urban projects, and France hosting the conference. But France has also been committed to development for quite some time, and that's why France has decided to increase its contribution from 2 billion euros to 5 billion euros in order to promote the emergence of that fund. The French Development Agency, AFD, the AFD will also contribute to sponsoring projects, but will only be able to do this, and as is done worldwide, this can only be done and deployed if you have real projects. And you as mayors, you as local authorities have to embody these projects. This means that the climate conference cannot succeed unless, following the agreement, we have a mobilization. You have created a process by local authorities. You have to be able to access those resources in order to invest in sustainable development, in order to take actions to allow your citizens to be fully responsible. And I'd like to move on to the fourth and final challenge, democracy. The fight against climate change is also a struggle by democracy. There can be no success unless we are all involved, each and every one of us. I'm not talking about elected officials, I'm talking about each and every citizen. Currently, there are local reforms underway in every country which are allocating greater competency, authority, and resources to local authorities with different allocations of actions. National governments can decide on the rules, they can provide funding, and they can provide incentives. They could also invest, but increasingly we'll see that territories themselves will be the key players, and we have to rely upon citizens. If there is no personal responsibility, if there is not a climate ethic, if there are not strong incentives so that the decisions we take in our daily life are modified, there will be no reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of the degree that we wish. Okay, we've set the objective of 2 degrees, and we know that if we look at all existing contributions, we will be above 2 degrees. That's why I hope we'll have a revision mechanism in the agreement. But we also have to mobilize all technologies in order to achieve this throughout the decades projects in order to reduce climate warming and to bring it within the 2-degree limit. Some people say 1.5 degrees, but we will only do this if you are able to use technologies. So more than funding. The question is sharing technologies. The Indian Prime Minister developed the idea of an alliance for solar energy. China resolutely committed to renewable energy. Africa is now developing a project to allow electricity to be available to all, finally. So how could we coordinate all of these efforts? We need technologies, low-cost technologies, which make it possible to change our climate in this way. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I would like to welcome your commitment. I'd like to underscore the strength that you embody and represent. It was a great pleasure for me to welcome the heads of state and government. It was a matter of pride. I saw exactly what that meant, not only for my country when we were struck, but I saw what this meant for the entire world. When we see this awareness, but I also know what this meeting today signifies with players, regarding funding and day in, day out action. And let me tell you what I thought. If you look at political action, there are things which can be measured in the urns periodically with elections. But there is a challenge which goes beyond terms of office and which extends beyond our lifetimes in public office and our lifetimes as human beings. We have to take action for a period of time when we will no longer be alive. We won't be able to measure the results, but we are committing to this. But what's greater, what's more noble in public service than wanting to move forward to transmit something to future generations, to look at humanity? And if we're not being judged on what we're doing today, we will be judged in the future based on what we succeed in doing, and the judgment will be harsher if we do not succeed. But looking at you, I am convinced that we shall succeed. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président, je vais vous demander de vous approcher. Je vais demander à Michael
I'd
Bloomberg,
like you, Michael Bloomberg and Hidalgo, and the four mayors behind me. I'd like, okay, and the representatives from the networks in the first row, only them. Please come forward. Everyone else is being asked to remain seated, and we're going to have a photograph here. It's a photo opportunity. We're seated.
Bien. Mesdames et messieurs les maires, chers
So, ladies and gentlemen, mayors and delegates, while the President of the French Republic leaves City Hall, we are going to proceed to the conference rooms for the parallel sessions. I'm going to read this now. So the CGLU Global Concert, this is St. John Room at 10 o'clock. The C40 Forum in the Arcade Room. City of Paris Council Room, 10:30 for the conference on cities of the future, China. Bertrand Room for the Daily press conference that begins at 11 o'clock. We'll be back at 12:30 p.m. for lunch outside the downstairs of City Hall, and at 7 p.m. we will have homage to the victims of the terrorist attacks.